I'm back with another one, and this one, I want to this video might actually be a cap to if anyone has watched my previous series about the expansive thought, and in this series, one was I completed yesterday, and one I'm doing right now about the expansive thought, but then also the different perceptual bias and being a man. It's actually a little bit tied together, so I'm going to enter this one with the spirit of, if you can imagine someone that just took a wound and then they're tying it off right there. That's a little bit like I'm doing, because more so where a lot of this content, I'm more so just extending myself personally and maybe digitally to upload these type of statements. And I so far you can't appreciate very much value for this type of, for what I'm attempting, except just the confidence and the skill of enunciating ideas, because that part of doing that, but also doing it in a public space where you're certain that it's being uploaded and received by at least maybe one person now or in the future, that somehow opens channels of communicating, but also understanding, because we understand things also by communicating, and hearing ourselves say things is also important. If you can imagine sitting around a person's couch like a professional and talking about what you've been through or how you think about things, I don't recommend that. I don't mean to steer a person away from that if that's for you, but me personally, I wouldn't feel confident doing something like that, or that it was working in my interest. But no less, the act of doing that and enunciating that could allow a person to help understand themselves, and then with a person hearing that and maybe collaborating with that or asking questions, that can help further understand. But I don't know that questions actually, if a question isn't coming from a certain place, questions can be a form of challenging a person, and also setting a person up to injure themselves. So I would be careful about anyone asking me questions, generally speaking, especially if they're getting paid to do so. But doing this on a public platform, it actually might be similar to that in understanding and enunciating things, but having maybe a greater value by at least potentially landing with someone kindred, and that not being lost on someone's couch, or receiving professional or medical injury in terms of our status for offering certain statements. But what I meant to say is that so a lot of things, the best things that we accomplish, sometimes we more so get it done indirectly, and you actually somehow do have to be blessed for certain things to happen, because as honest as you do, as the best as you do, there are so many obstructions and counterintuitive processes and reactions, and as Nassim Nicholas Taleb would say, non-linear reactions, that many of which don't work in our favor. But the things that we actually do get to enjoy or taste, they're not a lot of times they're not a direct consequence of our effort, but they are at least an indirect consequence of our effort. And some of our best contributions, intentions, undertakings, sacrifices, they amount to an experience, or at least an opportunity to experience something directly and indirectly, but maybe more indirectly, where we actually come across something. So today I actually rested off something of what can be a blessing off of a tree, that it represents a lot of struggle and sacrifice and contributions that I didn't know where it would go to, but I did something cool today. That's still it's gonna yet require as much work or more work to maintain or make it amount to something as it took to get here, but at least the opportunity to further work and have a means to achieve is at hand, and is viable and live. So I meant to say that came on the back end of countless what would appear to be losses. And it actually, you talk about like the Himalayas, it might actually take a mountain of losses to reach some kind of peak of understanding, or real fresh air. I think they call that rarefied air, like when you're at the top of a mountain. And to taste a little bit, I tasted a little bit of rarefied air, where I had a celebration that was recognized by outstanding men and professionals that would have had to they can appreciate the type of men that I had that celebration with, and something of a victory lap. I would have had to come through a lot to get there, and I can feel that, and the type of men they are, they can appreciate what that would mean to come to this point where I was at with them. So that's significant, but it comes on top of loss on top of loss. And when my parents were naming me, I appreciate my name, but if they would have named me something else, such as loss, that could a lot of my experiences has been losses upon losses, or what would appear to be that, or at least I've had to suck it up a lot, and will yet continue to suck it up a lot. But all I meant to say is that but with that, so I'm tying off this. A lot of these videos are actually wounding. They would appear to be wounding me as much as they're benefiting me or anyone else. But but I'm not asking for flowers with that. But what I meant to say is that to tie off this series is that I talked about how I'm talking about manhood. I'm talking about being a man, and I'm also talking about being a man of color in this from the perspective of a man of color, at least in terms of social, ethnic, social, economic appearance, as that's superficially appreciated, but also how we feel the repercussions of our superficial appearance, positive and negative, but more so challenging, I think, from my experience. But I certainly can't cry about nothing, because people would have different perceptual challenges that are as beautiful, redeeming, and more challenging than what I've experienced. But all I meant to say is that part of what I experienced as the what I'm calling oppression in the West as an abusive relationship, part of the key feature of which is that, as I appreciate it, is the concealment of death, and also the combination of flattery and insult. And a perfect example of that is the N-word, as it's still embraced in modern popular culture. Now, a lot of times when people say things like the N-word, or they use different vernacular or things that they think are slang, a lot of it's not new, but it would maybe feel new because it's forceful like that. But a lot of the ways that people linger, that banter in slang, it sounds almost no different today than it did like when I was in high school, hearing a lot of the same expressions in high school. It actually hasn't changed very much. So if you appreciate change in terms of language, because a lot of our experience is conveyed over language, a lot of the language hasn't changed so much as an iota, or maybe one or two words in a long, it takes a long time for maybe one or two words to come in vogue, or one or two aesthetics in terms of expression. And so you could say that might be beautiful, and that's redeeming, and that's culture, but some of it's detriment. So you take the modern age, the digital age, as fancy and sophisticated as, and I would wager that one of the most used words in, if you were to take all the words that are used commonly on the internet, at least in Western countries, one of the prominent words would be the N-word, especially in the United States, but also places referenced by the N-word. And the N-word is a perfect example of an abusive relationship, is the N-word, because so there's at least three iterations of the N-word. Now, when the N-word has an ER on the end of it, that's more so of that's a purely segregating term. That's saying that that's ostensibly a person of a non-African American background, or they appreciate themselves as such, whether they are or not, saying that you are a person that is considered black, which is in past times that was a legal code word that means less than sovereign, not having the privileges of voting, literacy, and owning property, which amounts to status and opportunities to enjoy and sustain our existence. That's what you're saying with the word black. And when you say white, you're saying a sovereign person, that is a person that can at least read, write, or at least enjoy property, and maybe marry into property, and also vote. And when you're saying with the ER at the end of the N-word, you're saying that whatever you think about yourself, whatever you think about people who are not like yourself, whatever you have to do, whatever your history, whatever your background, you are not now, had not in the past, and will not in the future be appreciated as being the same as us who are not African American. But when you put that ER at the end of the word, there's certain currents of history and human experience that resound within words, because as that word has been used historically into the present, that word corresponds to different atrocities and painful experiences, is the ER at the end of that word. But then you put the A at the end of that word. Now that ER is not acceptable by any person in the society, but yet it has a certain weight when a person of a non-African American background uses that word. It's very forceful. But then with the A at the end of the word, the N word with an A at the end of it, that has an exact dual intonation, where it's more so of like a hunting, green lighting, hunting season term, where when you call a person the an N-word, it can be endearment, because that you're saying that you would have had to go through this vulnerability and this marginalization with that word. And since I'm calling you that word, we're having solidarity and brotherhood, because I'm calling you that word with an AR and an A at the end of it, and it's endearing. Or it can say what this and what that one's about to do to this and that N-word, and that N-word is also, it's like a green light that because a person is an N-word, they can be victimized as a person who is not an N-word cannot be, is what you're saying with that. So that's an exact abusive relationship, because it conveys the insult and the threat of violence, but also the brotherhood and the solidarity to be effective as a as a manipulative and an abusive word.